Good morning, 360 Suite fans. This is Bruno, live from the great state of Boston, Massachusetts. As always, we're going to have an awesome time all together today. I will be co-presenting this event today with Patrick Perrier, our VP of Product based in the city of London. Hey, Patrick, how's it going?
Bruno, I'm very good. How are you?
Good, Patrick. I see you haven't changed your hat. After the game last week, I thought you'd get a Bruins hat, but we can talk about that offline. So,
is it the one where we trash you 8-2? Is that the one?
That was history.
Well, very happy to be here, everybody. Hi, I'm Patrick, head of product. Super happy to do one of these webinars, old school 360 suite business objects on a super awesome topic. I'm a massive fan of Snowflake, so super happy to be here.
Hey, and then also, we've got David Richard from Snowflake, and he's based in the phenomenal city of Lausanne, Switzerland. So, David, you want to say a couple of words before we start?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, part of the Snowflake Field CTO team. And before that, I spent years and years selling business objects and SAP, so super happy to show how it can work on Snowflake.
Thank you very much, David. We're going to have a great time today. By the way, folks, as always, this event is recorded and it will be made available after the event, and it'll be on our YouTube channel as well. If you got any questions, feel free to ask them during the event, and then we'll do our best to answer to them towards the end. As always, we try to spend some time answering as many questions as we can. David, it was funny when I was preparing this webinar with you and then with Patrick, I was just saying it's just amazing over the years to see how many customers were going to Snowflake. And it's kind of funny, years ago, we would have a joke where people would say, you know what, we all want to go to the cloud, and cloud is like heaven. And people would say, okay, we'll be going to heaven, we'll be going on the cloud or to the cloud, but just not too soon. Then right now everybody's on the cloud, and it's funny because it used to be the same thing for Snowflake a couple of years ago. As people saying, you know what, it's really cool, and we'll probably be going to Snowflake, but just not too soon. Well, the reality is, after a couple of years, actually after 4.2 SB8, if I recall, on BobJ, well, you guys have been crushing it. We've been involved in, I like to say, maybe over 100 migrations involving Snowflake. So I can say, you guys nailed it. And we're super happy to be co-presenting with you today so that you can actually share what is Snowflake, what makes sense for BobJ users to go to Snowflake. So, and answer all these questions. So the event of today will be split into two parts. The first part will be what and why Snowflake and why is it popular? And then the second part will be how to go to Snowflake with 360 Suite. And of course, at the end, we will have a Q&A. So Patrick, or actually David, I will pass it over to you for the first part. So I think that's probably better that we start with you, David. So
yeah, I'm super happy to talk about this. I think one of my largest customers I have, whether it's a CPG or massive software companies or retailers, they have massive estates on business objects, and they love it because the SQL generation, the joint elimination, but especially the universes, and they put thousands of people hours into these things, and they want to keep it. On the other hand, the databases aren't what they used to be on premise, and so I'm going to go through a couple of things where I think it's like super helpful for the customers that have these business objects estates to move their database onto Snowflake. And I think, okay, maybe I'll say some future statements. So I just have a bit of safe harbor on that side. But if we take a look at Snowflake, it's not, it used to be a database, and it's really transformed in the past couple of years. And I've been here for about 3 years, but it's really transformed into a platform where it's not just, you bringing your data in, but it's actually being able to share that data without it moving. And we really call that the data cloud. So, potentially 7 to 10,000 Snowflake customers can share out their data with any of the other customers seamlessly without the FTP, without the file movement. So that's one of, probably the biggest thing about Snowflake is this ability to have data and to share it, and with the marketplace to have, pandemic data or meteorological data or foot traffic or whatnot, and just be able to mix it immediately on the Snowflake side. So that's, it's probably the biggest thing there. But then the second thing is, it's just, and we'll go over some of the parts of why it's unique and why there's just been a massive adoption over the past couple of years. What are SAP and what are business objects customers looking at when they move some of these systems? And it goes a bit beyond just on the reporting level, but why are they moving it from SAP? And it could be, your business objects could be sitting on SAP HANA, it could be Oracle, any other, legacy systems there. And one of the key constraints of these systems is that they're resource bound, and they're usually, monolithic stacks. And if somebody hit a bad query against a bad player there, it'd fall over, and that'd be, it'd impact the hundreds of people on the system. With Snowflake and the way it's been architected is that you could have bad players and they fall over and they drop, their own clusters, and it just restarts. And so you can have, tens of thousands of people on a Snowflake account, and it runs and it scales up that compute laterally or vertically on the types that you need. So you've now moved from, I need to shut down everybody except for finance at the end of the month, to, hey, I can have everybody on the system. They're hitting against the same set of data, where they're using business objects report on one side or other parts, and I can be doing the ingestion. And and then second part, it just works, right? So the first part is we have this ability to have that self-service we've been talking about for 20, 30 years now, without falling over. And then the second one, it just works. You don't have the database maintenance and all the things that we had beforehand on Snowflake. It's a database as a service. And then I'd already talked about the connected to what matters piece, where you can have, within your supply chain, within your business partners, users, you can be able to, start sharing this data immediately. And isn't it cool that you can now have, on a business objects report, it could be your data, but then it could also, you could be unioning underneath maybe, your different companies that are under the main one, to do some kind of a consolidation piece at the database level and things like that. Good so far? Or
yeah, and I think a good question for people is, I think a lot of people know Snowflake, and I think I would say pretty much everyone is convinced. What can you tell us about, what's specific for Bajay in terms of cost and the type of data?
Right, excellent question. So, typically if you have business objects license, and you have the database license behind that, and you're paying 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. And so when you're creating these databases and you need to scale them, you're like, okay, what's the biggest, what's the busiest day of the year? Can I handle the capacity? And I will build to that. So, that's moved on. From a Snowflake perspective, you can scale within seconds, from going from maybe an 8 processor or an extra small to 64 processors or 4,000 processors. We have this monstrous thing called a 6XL in a matter of seconds, and so that's the compute size. And then you're only paying for what you use. And so I'll explain that a little bit. And then the second part is like being able to not only have the data, the traditional data that you have from your enterprise systems, but now bring in more of some of this IoT data, but you still report on it using business objects. And then down below it, more of the metadata that's coming from unstructured data, PDFs and whatnot. And then we've already talked a bit about the performance and stability, but I'll go a bit deeper into that. If we take a look at how things work, and it's almost scalar. It's like I have a report, and maybe in this case I'm loading a billion records. And if I'm on extra small, it's going to take me 13 minutes. But this linear is like, oh, why don't I just, switch it to a small, and it's going to take me half the time, or medium, a quarter of the time and a third of the time. And what's interesting is because we're billing by the second, is that price point, whether it's an extra small or large, is the same, right? Because large might be more expensive, but it takes that less time to run it. So that's something that people need to get a grasp of. It's no longer a question of like, oh, I'll run an extra small to keep my costs. Is like, hey, I can run a large and I'm going to turn it off. That's the other thing, is we have an off button, on button. It's like electricity or utilities. If we look at some of the other solutions out there from the other suppliers on the cloud, is that they take 10, 15 minutes to start up and then shut down. You're actually paying for that. And whereas for Snowflake, you're not.
You're very cruel with it, because but the fact is, it's the reality. And you've always got these t-shirt sizes, and it's always very understanding. It's always difficult to understand what fits in what, and then trying to understand the cost. Well, here it seems to be very linear, and actually,
there's a sweet point, right? And then you see it go. It's like at some point, if you get it too big, then it's you don't have enough processors, and then the price just goes up. So yeah, there's a sweet point.
And David, you didn't mention, but also the auto shutdown. So that's it. When it's not used, it shuts down automatically. Save money. Here we go.
It's great. So one thing, absolutely set that up. And two, we have something called monitor. And I got burned on this about last week because I didn't set up a resource monitor on that. But I always go back when I'm talking to customers, like, do you have teenagers? And they're like, yeah, we all have teenagers, and my kids are a bit older than that now. But they're like, you don't let them run the shower for 24 hours a day. He's like, you got your 5 minutes, and there's a light that goes red, and get out. So it's kind of same principle on that. It's like, as any utilities, water, electricity, turn it off, and you get the benefits if you do turn it off and you manage it. But it's a mind shift if you want. The other thing that for 20 years, I was working with structured data, and if you want to get data into SAP or have business objects report on it, you really need to massage the data to get it into the database. And it's like, Snowflake changed that radically, is where you can build it. You pull in your JSON, you can pull in your XML and these semi-structured data structures into the same table in Snowflake. For example, I can have array in one and the other, and then I can use a flattening call. And then I can report business objects on top of it. And so it just makes a lot of sense on there. And then, we can go a bit more into unstructured data, but it's just opened up this whole, how do you say this whole universe, if use a better word, of being able to access that data. And then from that also, just the scale of it, right? I think one of the, biggest SAP systems, is around 120 terabytes, whereas on the Snowflake side, our biggest customer is running 40 to 50 petabytes. So it's about 280 times bigger in just the amount of data that they can access.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and this just shows it a bit more, and I'm sure we'll share out the slides. I'm happy to have answer any questions on that and how it works. But some of the things are going to be familiar from our SAP days and whatnot. A column store, which HANA is, and also Sybase, and so is Snowflake, and it's more on the analytics side of the house for that. Performance and stability. So just the brief rundown on Snowflake architectures. You land the data once, it's actually copied out in triplicate across if it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, and then you have, we call them virtual warehouses. I wish we called them like clusters, compute clusters, but keep the virtual warehouse. And just the way it works is that I can be ingesting data, and I can also have different teams running different warehouses, hundreds or thousands of warehouses hitting against this common set of data. And there's a certain amount of intelligence on it that will see that, and a caching mechanism that we don't see in other databases. And that just allows that performance that we're talking about, being able to have these extra largest, or we have something called multi-cluster warehouses, where maybe have 5 users, and so one warehouse is enough, but it goes 10, 15, 20.
Mhm.
Instead of caching and queuing, we just spin up, or we attach more of these systems to keep that queuing down and keep the performance up, which is another big gain. I remember waiting for minutes and minutes for some of these bigger reports to run. And just to dispel one other thing is that people think, okay, just the way Snowflake's built, it's slower than HANA or in memory. Yeah, maybe on the smaller operational things, but you get these bigger queries, this big data query, Snowflake just kills it. Why? Is because we don't get out of memory errors, for one, and there's other reasons behind that.
And I confirm that that's something we've heard actually quite a few times from customers, and the ability to leverage a cache like that makes things super efficient. So,
and then maybe just to drill down a bit, and then I'll pass it on to Patrick. I like to talk too much, but you land the data, and then these virtual warehouses, as soon as you run a query, it's gonna pull the different parts, we call them micro partitions, the ones that are needed, so there's a pruning into that memory of that virtual warehouse. And as long as that virtual warehouse is running and you have other queries that are using that same data set, it's just going to hit the cache there. And then the results of every single query that you run, it gets cached for 24 hours. And if the underlying data doesn't change, any other queries that are exactly the same is going to run against that cache. And so you can have dashboarding scenarios where people are all seeing the same thing, and it's just gonna hit against that cache, which is super efficient, and makes it just that much faster.
you have a bonus today?
I just have a bonus.
Very much like David,
Yeah, it's just craziness. If you, I was like, why not? Because I didn't put it in my agenda. So the ability of Snowflake to span across all its different customers, across all the different environments is one. Okay, if you're in the same region on AWS, Azure, or whatnot, it's super easy between customers or business partners or whatnot. But if you're in different regions, there's a whole marketplace set up with behind the scenes. Is there like, okay, maybe I want to publish out information, I don't know, supplier scorecard information, and I want to share that with everybody and sell it. And so I have that here in Australia, and then as soon as somebody requests that, then there's a replication mechanism that happens there, and that's just kept up to date, and all that's done behind the scenes, whereas that would be hugely complicated to do that, to maintain one set of data worldwide. And Snowflake, we just manage that. And so from that, I'll pass it on to Patrick now. So let me just
awesome. Hey,
screen.
Thank you very much.
And if you have questions, right?
Well, we'll probably take some questions after. There are just some questions here. I see Sumit is asking, hey, do we get this presentation as well? Yeah, of course, you'll be getting the presentation. Actually, Sumit, the best is just send us an email, and then we'll arrange actually to send you quickly the presentation of today. So that's something that we can do. Anyway, Patrick, it's the next part is all with you.
Yeah.
So,
well, with us. So, all right. So, if and when you decide to adopt Snowflake, the data will need to go from wherever it's stored at the moment, will go to Snowflake, and it may have an impact on your business objects universes, and therefore the reports. So Bruno, what have we here?
Yeah, so over the years, we put together actually different strategies because Snowflake has become such a thing. Everybody's going to Snowflake. So overall, we've got three scenarios that we'll be sharing today. We've got the traditional lift and shift, go from one place to another, and then we'll detail all the steps there. The second step, which is also pretty common, is actually where you need to do some transformation. So that gets actually a little bit trickier. These are more complex. And of course, this happens when you've got a non-relational database. And then the third part is lift and shift advanced, where you've got some issues with the schema. You've got to do extra testing. So this is actually the third part that we're going to cover today. Patrick, just by the way, before we go to the first scenario, what are the common prereqs for deployment, for BobJ deployment to go to Snowflake? So which BobJ version, what can you say about that?
Yeah, it's a good place to start for sure. So Snowflake official support was released in 4.2 SP8. So that's the minimum release you have to be. And it is only supported for the newer type of universes, the UNX format in single source mode. So if you have universes today in UNVs and you move that data to Snowflake, that UNV will need to become a UNX. So that's what we have in scenario number 3. If you have a universe today, which is configured as a multi-source universe, well, that universe will need to become a single source universe. Now, you may know that you cannot roll back. With business objects, it's not technically possible to roll back from a multi-source UNX to a single source UNX. Well, 360 Suite, we can help you with that. Our solutions will help you to do what is impossible in business objects, which is to convert UNX multi-source to UNX single source. So in terms of prerequisites, here we go, 4.2 SP8 or above, you need to have a UNX in single source.
And folks, this is really important. Like I think 2 weeks ago, we were talking with the deployment where they were in 4.3. I think it was SP2, and they were actually going to Snowflake, and then they've realized that they were in UNX, and then they had some multi-source universes, and actually they were, their entire project was stuck, and it was actually going to cause them significant delays because they just couldn't convert from multi-source to single source. So that was a big issue. And another thing that we've seen over the years, we actually have seen some deployments that were in 4.2 SP7, and then they didn't want to do any upgrade to 4.2 SP8 or above. And then they were trying to find some shortcuts going to Snowflake. And, trust us, we've been involved in so many projects. That does not work. Okay, just don't even think about it. Go at least to SP8, okay? And of course, make sure that you are in UNX in single source. So there is no secret about that. And I'm sure our marketing folks will be sharing. Patrick actually had written a Bible about, a white paper about how to go to Snowflake. I think if you guys want to sleep tonight, it's about 70 pages long. So
I think it's like 100, but anyway.
It's extremely detailed. And again, if you can't sleep, it's just, you'll have a double usage.
Now, on a serious note, most of you, if you're going into a modern transformation project to go to something like Snowflake in the cloud, you are probably are in 4.3 already, or preparing to do so, which is great. 4.2, like I said, SP8, but 4.2 ran out of maintenance support in December last year anyway. So just keep in mind that you would want to go. You want to go to 4.3 as soon as possible, regardless. Now, Bruno, if I put a bit more details on this slide before we go for the steps. So scenario number 1, you see the traffic light here. Scenario number 1 is the easiest. If you're in that situation, good for you. It means that you take your data from your source database, you send it in Snowflake. Luckily, if you're lucky, there's no SQL syntax differences, so the syntax remains the same. Maybe your universes are a bit simpler. They're already in UNX. So basically, it's the easiest scenario. There's very little to no work to do in business objects. So 360 Suite will be here to help you with the documentation of this project. So we'll go in business objects. We'll tell you which documents are using a universe that is now pointing to Snowflake. And thanks to that, we'll guide you into understanding which documents needs to be tested. And I'll come back to that. Scenario number 2, this is the worst scenario. I've put it in orange, maybe I could have put it in flashing red. you go to Snowflake, but the amount of work that needs to be redone is so vast that you need to build from scratch new universes, and therefore, of course, new web intelligence document. So again, 360 Suite will be there to help you with the data inventory, understanding which data belong to which reports. Therefore, you know what data you need to have available in Snowflake, and will help you. That will help you to build these new universes and these new Webby reports. So again, a lot of information we can give you to prepare for this such big transformation project. And I don't know, David, I'll ask you after scenario number 3. I'm not sure which of the 3 scenarios is the most common out there when you work with business objects, but the scenario number 3 is the one that I have personally seen the most. Is that we'll shift the data to Snowflake. There's some light differences in the SQL queries, on the more advanced SQL queries that you may have in a universe. So the universe will need some updating. Maybe you are in UNV because you were coming from an old 4041 world. So the universes are not in UNX. And this is where you'll need the most help to accelerate this project. And 360 Suite will help you with tons of things, which I'll detail in the next slide. But David, scenario 1, 2, or 3. Which one is the one you guys are still thinking the most?
What's behind door number 1?
You hope so.
It's absolutely critical, as you said. But I think the biggest thing here is being able to scope it, right? People don't know how much time it's going to take, and so this pre-migration assessment is just, I think it's really comforting, and I think it helps people plan for how they're going to do it, and obviously 360 Suites, that's where you show the benefit of not only the analysis part, but then the work behind it. So I think it's probably either number 2 or 3, because some of these customers haven't changed anything in 15 years, and they're like, we're going to go to the cloud, and it's like, yeah. So
it's exactly that. And so scenario number 1, the lift and shift. Listen, it's simple. We'll do here. We have a solution which will read your metadata stored in business objects. We'll read the audit log as well, so you know what's used and what's not used. And then that way you can plan and accelerate, help you accelerate this part of going to Snowflake. You move your data. 360 Suite will help you to test everything. And afterwards, 360 Suite is not only there for your project, but it's there for your ongoing maintenance and support. So I will detail each of these steps in a second. Now, scenario number 2, the one which is large transformation, we cannot help with the testing really here, because you're going to end up building new universes and new Webby reports. So the pre-migration assessment is once again where 360 Suite will shine the most. Now, the lift and shift, we like to separate that in 7 steps or 6 steps, first of all, for the project. So the full assessment. So full assessment is what? I have a slide here. We'll go into your business objects, and you'll say, right, everything which is, let's say, Oracle or Sybase, that's the data that I'm sending to Snowflake. Okay, so which universes do I have pointing to these connections, which were pointing to these old databases? And thanks to knowing which universes need to be affected, the full analysis will tell you, is it a UNV or UNX? Is it a single source or multi-source? We'll tell you which Webby reports are linked to these universes. These are the ones that you'll want to test. Maybe they are the ones that will need some a bit of rework. So full analysis, it takes 5 minutes to install this product. You run the metadata. That will take it depends on the size of your environment, and at the end you get those pre-built reports in business objects where we'll tell you these connections, these universes, even these objects in these universes are consumed by these Webby. So that's great. Now, Bruno, do we like testing stuff that we don't need to?
No, and actually, generally speaking, over the years, I think we've done over 1,000 migrations just on BobJ, for sure. And what we've seen over years is it's very common to see that over 60% of the content is not used in the past 13 months. And we've got ways to, of course, to locate that content, to archive it. So there are a lot of different strategies around that.
So absolutely. So it's the strength of 360 Suite with a pre-migration assessment is to link that metadata with the usage data. So that way you can say, hey, these are the universes that are impacted by this Snowflake transformation. These are the Webby reports, link to them, and they will tell you which Webby reports have been used the last time and by whom. And that way you can decide what you test first, what you test later, and maybe what you don't test at all. Absolutely. And these reports, like Bruno just said, if they're not going to work, maybe it's time to archive them, and 360 Suite will help you with that.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal because if you're able to remove the content or to archive the content that's not used, you're going to have a lot less problems. So not only that you save basically about the same amount of percentage of time, but actually on the remaining content, you're going to have content that has been used that will have less problems. So it's, the amount of saving is actually even greater. And the reason, for people that don't know 360 Suite or Wiiisdom 360 Suite is we extract metadata from the auditor, the CMS, and the file store. And overall, because we're able to mix to brew that metadata, we're able to extract the non-usage.
So you've done your assessment, you know what will be impacted, if any, and now you work with Snowflake or a Snowflake partner, and you go ahead and shift your data to Snowflake. Now, this is where some of you may need to do the next following slides or steps. If you're UNV universes, like I said, it needs to become a UNX. That you can do in business objects manually, one by one, or you can do that in bulk using 360 Suite. So you can say, well, I have 50 universes impacted by this. I want to convert all of 50 in 5 clicks. Here we go. Select all, select the few, next. That's it. They all become UNX automatically. So that's good. And again, using the same product, if they were UNX already, but multi-source, and you had to convert them to single source, that is impossible to do with business objects, but you can do that with 360 Suite. And finally,
next week we will have a webinar, about how to go from UNV to UNX, and then also we'll be presenting how to convert a multi-source to a single source. So that's on April 6th, and we'll be actually sharing in the comment box a link so that you guys can register if you've got some interest. And we'll go, we're not going in the entire detail of that process during this webinar because we're actually doing the same thing. We're going to go in that detail next week. So
how can you migrate back to bobj.exe? That was the best.
Well, now that shows how long ago we've been doing this. And finally, let's pretend that, or if you are in the scenario where inside of the universe you have some SQL statements, and these SQL statements were database specific, for your old vendor, and that syntax does not work with Snowflake. There are some differences, and they are documented on the Snowflake website. Well, you'll need to update these things inside of the universes. And again, 360 Suite, you have the ability to download the universe schema, if you want to call it like this. It's on an Excel spreadsheet. Update the select, the where clause, and other things like that. Also, update the SQL inside of spreadsheet. First, it's a lot quicker. Two, you can document these changes, and then you re-upload the spreadsheet to 360 Suite in business objects, and then these changes will be made for you. So a lot of accelerators you can see here for everything that may impact you during these Snowflake project with your universes. Now, if you end up having a new universe, so you move from UNV to UNX or UNX multi-source, universe single source, or you decide to make a copy of universes before making the changes, at the end of the day, you end up with a new universe. Well, naturally, the web intelligence, which are pointing still to the old universe, they now need to point to the new universe. Before you do the repointing, you need to make sure you have a backup. Again, 360 Suite will be there to easily back up everything, which means you can easily restore even at the object level if there's any problem. So it's not a backup of the database, backup of some of the file store. Is no backup individual objects inside of business objects. If you need to restore 1, 2, 50 of them because they are the ones with problems, but the rest is fine, you can really easily do a select restore of only what is impacted. So very powerful. Now it's time for the repointing. Again, if you have a new universe, this WebE needs to be pointed to the new UNX. I'm sure you know how manual and how painful it is to do one by one in business objects, especially if the WebE has multiple universes and several data providers. So 360 Suite again is there to the rescue. Do that in bulk. Just say, hey, every WebE that used to point to that universe, and I want to point to this universe. And with 360 Suite, we support the same strategies as you could do manually in WebE, but you do that in bulk. So you want to convert 1,000 documents, you convert 1,000 documents in only one screen. So it's very good.
And this is a huge time saving. And by the way, we can also do that, of course, for crystal reports. And as you all know, with I hope by the end of 4.3 itself, UNVs will no longer be supported. So definitely, you've got a Snowflake project, you've got to go. And regardless, it's not a waste of time because you will need to be going away from UNVs to UNXs before the end of 4.3. So, better do it soon than later. And we've been talking about that for years with Patrick. I think, what was it, since 4.1 or which version? I can't remember, but it's been, that topic's been ongoing for years. So I think now there's an end of life, and you want to go to Snowflake, go to UNX.
All right, and finally, the testing. So now the testing is for everybody, even if you didn't convert a universe or you didn't repoint any web intelligence. At the end of the day, you had WebE reports that used to point to your source database. So let's pretend that's the one on the left here. You have the new report, which is now pointing to Snowflake. At the end of the day, the data should remain exactly the same. So with 360 Suite, just pick all of the reports that you want to test. Any number, it's fine. We do not. It's a machine doing this for you, so don't hesitate. And you have 1,000 reports, you have 5,000 reports you want to test. We will have a look at the old WebE pointing to the old universe, to the new WebE pointing to the new universe, and we'll tell you if there are any differences. So again, this is a solution that can do it if you side by side, no problem. Let's say you have your old prod environment and your test environment compared side by side. But we can also, if you have only one environment, we can take a picture of these reports before you do the switch, and then the reports after. Same result here. We'll tell you if the data is the same or not. If it's not, we'll highlight where it is. If there's any changes in the graphics based on that data, we'll highlight in red here, as you can see where they are. So, and we'll even validate the performance. We'll tell you, hey, before in your old system, the report took 2 minutes to refresh. Now with Snowflake, it takes David, how quickly? 10 seconds.
It's up
2
to
minutes and 10 seconds.
It's up to you now, right? You need to run
Absolutely.
faster, and you power it up.
Absolutely. But with 360 Suite, you'll be able to document the before and the after. And I'm sure you want equal or better, like David said. We'll give you the metrics so you can power it up, based on what is required for you.
And Patrick here, as you said, we're able to document all the testing. So that's very important to say, hey, has it been tested? Because in reality is there will be regressions. It always happens. And the issue is to find where they are. And the first question that you'll get from business or whoever is, have you tested things?
So this is a real output out of the product. So it is something that is documented, and you can give to your auditor or BI manager or whoever is requesting that everything was tested and wants to see evidence. You can just give them a report back, and they'll see exactly what was tested and if there was any differences.
And David, I've got a question for you. Do you see a lot of deployments that are still not testing their outputs when they do such type of migration?
You know, I think it's just a hit and miss. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. But I think already some of the things that you talked about earlier is you know, what's not even being used. Don't need to test it. But yeah, I think you know, the modern CI/CD, everybody's got to test it and sign off on it. Maybe they're not doing it as thoroughly as this tool can do that.
And I think in general, in terms of testing, what we see with customers is to test actually a Webby document on average, and this is very conservative. We see people take 2 hours or more per document. Of course, it depends on the type of document, how large it is, etc. But in reality, in general, it's over 2 hours. And the best practice as well is if you can't test everything, it's always better to test everything. But if you're really limited, make sure that you test at least your public documents, and then you extract metadata from based on the usage, and then you try to understand who are the power users are. You've got all that metadata with 360, and then make sure that you test these documents. And once you've put in place some of the testing here for the project, you can actually keep the testing afterwards to put in place CI/CD pipelines, and so that will save you, a huge amount of time. So if you imagine at minimum 2 hours to do testing times 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is, if every deployment is a little different, the amount of saving through testing is huge, and you will have errors. And at the end, it's a matter of liability. And where here you can automate and document the entire testing. So this is really cool when it comes to testing with 360 Suite. So thanks a lot. We don't have that much time left, but I see a question here. Do we see, question from Sumit, who's asking, do we see Snowflake getting fit in if we have S4 HANA as ERP, which has HANA as a database? HANA database more or less provides the same functionality. How can I convince people to use Snowflake? Come on.
Can I?
You may answer.
So if you take a terabyte of HANA, it's roughly $350,000 to $400,000 a year. You take a terabyte of Snowflake, it's $23 for the storage cost and then some compute on it. So one, it's just phenomenally, much, much, much cheaper to run your analytic flows on Snowflake. Second, HANA is it's, even if they've moved it to the cloud and things like that, it's just uneconomical to scale this up to anything that's called big data. And then also along that it's you can't have so many people on it, right? You're either gonna you have too many users and you get out of memory, or the queries get too big and you get out of memory. HANA database has been tuned, and you're talking about S4. S4 on an ERP, this is a transactional database, and 95% of the customers out of there are not going to run analytic flows on the transactional database, no matter what SAP says. When I was working at SAP, they're like, we have an 80-20 rule. You have 80% absolutely SAP data. If you want to bring some other data in there to run analytics, don't overload the system. And so guidance on that, just outside of Snowflake or anything like that, is keep your SAP systems, ERPs lean and mean. Get your analytics on something else, please. and Snowflake's the best choice, of course, but just separate those workflows, and life will be much better. So maybe you want to add to that. Yeah.
Patrick, I think that question is from Bob that I see is, does 360 Suite support Snowflake as a database?
Of course we do. We cannot be a Snowflake, or we cannot say that we're a Snowflake partner without at least offering it in our product. So yeah, all of our product, 360 or the rest of the 360 Suite, we support Snowflake.
I see another question here. I have Teradata. How difficult is it to go from Teradata to Snowflake? And funny enough, actually, that's this is actually a very common use case that we see.
We have a ton of Teradata migrations, and we've also built out tooling and accelerators to help with that migration on the Snowflake side. But yeah, absolutely, great question, and we have a good answer, so that helps.
I have actually a question for you as well, David. Is do you see, in the past, HANA used to be a big thing a couple of years ago, and do you see a lot of customers going from HANA to Snowflake? Is this something that happens more and more, or not really? This is more exceptional.
So we have literally hundreds. Almost 20% of our customer base is some kind of HANA, and then moved, 10 or more tables across into Snowflake. Early 2010s, 2015, big companies, you Coca-Cola's, you got consumer packaged goods, you got Siemens out there that they just bought into the SAP HANA thing. They built out these massive enterprise data warehouses, 60 terabytes, costing 10, 15 million a year. And they don't have a good cost performance. And so they've shifted, and we've moved these across onto Snowflake. So, Coke One North America is a good reference. Siemens is a good reference. But these are the biggest guys on the planet as far as SAP is concerned, and they've moved to Snowflake. And then, but even down the road, I've got my a utilities company that they've moved across as well. So it's the biggest to the smallest. So I think I don't want to say it answers all the questions. It doesn't. But there's definitely a sweet spot, especially, on the Snowflake side. And guidance is like, if you are 100% SAP shop, maybe it doesn't make sense. But if you want to mix data, your IoT, your sensor, your industry, semi-structured, then it absolutely makes sense to pull that data off the SAP systems, mix it with that data.
Patrick, there's another question for you. For customers that are using SAP Data Services, which is actually quite common with HANA customers, is there anything where 360 Suite can help? Are there anything specific?
Yep, we can help with the assessment as well. So our solutions are able to not only document business objects, but we can document data services as well. So if you have any workflows and data flows and jobs which are using a Snowflake data source, we'll be able to document that for you, and then tell you what is the impact inside of data services. Yeah, absolutely.
And just a plug is that data services, I think 14.2 SP14 has a good connector to Snowflake. That's using the batch loading.
Here we go. Perfect. And we support 4.3 as well. So whichever data services you have, we're good to go.
And I think 4.3 for data services was introduced, I think, back in June. So that shouldn't be any issue. Let's take a last question from Raj, I see, and this is more for you, David. In terms of cost, what do you see going from a traditional database to Snowflake? What do you see in terms of cost saving?
Yeah, this is recorded, right? People don't believe me, but you're gonna see around a 60% cost saving. But that said, right, for a while there, you're gonna have both systems running, so it's gonna cost more, and then end of year one, year two, it's gonna have a steep decline if you just keep the workflows. But what we see is people putting more and more workloads onto the Snowflake part. But this means it's also reducing from non-SAP systems, right? Because customers, maybe 20% of their data is in SAP. Super important data, but there's the other 80%, the Microsoft SQL servers, Oracles, and all these other things that are lying around that people put into Snowflake so they can share the master data.
And David, in terms of cost for that, is this only like the infrastructure cost then, and the cost to operate, what you're referring to?
So the infrastructure cost is just built into the Snowflake pricing. You don't have to worry about it. I think it's something like, $3 an hour, and for that, and depend, how much storage you have, how much compute you use. And it's just packaged, right? It's one number. So this goes to operating expenditures over CapEx. So there's not this. I remember working on these SAP deals, and it's like, oh, you just have to pay 20 million up front. It's like, yeah. I was working with this one company that makes coffee capsules, and the first 3 months I was like spending more on coffee than they were, because it's all the DDL stuff is free in Snowflake. It's only once you start putting the load on that you'd actually start paying for it.
David, one of the reasons behind my question is very often when I see that type of cost comparisons, a lot of people sometimes omit actually when you've got your own database that's on-prem, there's like all the servers, and then there's always
it's transparent to these guys, right? Yeah, the electricity, the utilities, the SAP basis guys who are in these coats, black coats and sunglasses and everybody. They just somehow is like somebody else who pays for it. Oh, it's global IT that's that, so it's not on our budget. That's the other thing, is like, this really makes how much a query costs. You can find that out, and so it makes it costing really transparent. And some people like that, some people don't.
Yeah, and
overall, it's cheaper.
There's a huge cost to upgrade each time. So, in terms of labor, in terms of time, in terms of testing, it's always tricky. Okay, let's take one last question, which I guess is for me, is LinkedIn user. So I'm sorry I don't have the name here, but how much does it cost to buy 360 Suite solutions? First of all, we are subscription based, and is based on your BobJ deployment size. So I will tell you, it's extremely expensive. No, I'm kidding. No, it's actually pretty affordable, especially on this type of project where you need to do assessments, you need to do testing. Just get back to us, and then we'll be more than happy to provide you a detailed cost estimate to get 360 Suite. It depends very much of what you want to get and what you want to do. So, just let us know, and then we'll be more than happy to get back to you. David, it was great to have you on today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun as always. Additionally, as I said, this recording will be made available after the event. You can get on our YouTube channel, as well on our YouTube channel here. You can see we've got some bunch of content about how to go to 4.3, how to create dashboards in Webby, how to do impact analysis, regression testing. There is a lot of content that we have on that. And even we have a section there. It's not too much a topic, but we have even a section about how you can actually test your Tableau dashboards as well. So feel free to go and connect to our YouTube channel, Wiiisdom not with one I, not two I, but three I. So that's pretty easy to remember. Patrick, do you have anything else for the day, or you're all good?
All good. Well, listen, it was nice to be here today. Nice to see you, David. It's been a long time, and I always enjoy hearing about Snowflake, the Snowflake technology. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's awesome, and I hope a lot of you move to Snowflake, and we'll be here to to support you. We'll be here to support you in that journey. Yeah,
fantastic. Good message. Hey. Thank you.
That's all, folks. Thanks a billion for joining today. I hope you learned things today, that you had a good time. Be good, stay cool, and remember, visit wiiisdom.com and visit our YouTube channel. Take care, guys, and have an awesome day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.